So by 2018, my family situation and my business situation, I didn't know which one was going to end first. But
was it just the expenses kept getting higher again, like you were mentioning, just for the industry?
I just couldn't see the. It was just a battle. It didn't make any sense to me. Somebody else is controlling everything that I do. I got the cleanest milk house in the county, and there's this guy that tells me I got to do this and I got to do that and I got to do this, and I'm like, well, the guy up the road doesn't do that. So this milk inspector. Then you got this one doing this and this one doing that, and you're not milking enough cows, and you can't. What am I going to do? Borrow more money to milk more cows to get on the same wheel that everybody else is in? That I see my cousins that got 2,100 cows. They're on the wheel, baby, and the wheel's spinning, and they're in Albany trying to get $1 million from a kosher milk buyer that didn't pay them, and they don't have any recourse except going to the state. The state, they have this milk insurance fund, so that if you don't get paid by the processor, you go through this court process and you get paid, and they're just hanging on. They're just hanging on too. They're making milk at, they might be making $2 or $3 a hundredweight over their expenses this month, and then next month they might be $1 below, and then the next month they might be $4 over, and it all averages out to, at the end of the year, you're even. Well, all right, yeah, I got a 6,000 acre farm and I'm milking 2,100 cows and we are even. So I'm seeing that too. I also had a conversation. At one point I was going to build a little freestall barn, 120 cow freestall barn, and build a parlor and do all these different things. And I had the same consultant, farm credit consultant, that my cousins in Watertown had. He was a really good consultant. He came here, he met with my father and I, met with us individually. We made up a plan. He had 3 different plans and I had a plan. And I was leaning towards my plan. And then I think it was 92, I went to a Dairy Lee was putting on this dairy revitalization conference. And I met my cousin who had the 2,100 cows at it, and we roomed together and we went to the conference that first afternoon. And the second day I went down for a continental breakfast, and family friend of ours is sitting over at the table eating his donut. So I walked over and I said, "How are you, Billy John?" I sat down with him, and he said, just chit-chatting back and forth, and it's like, "What's going on at home on the farm?" And I started telling him. So this friend was at that point the president of First Pioneer Farm Credit, Bill Lipinski. So I told him I'd met with Don Rogers and what we were thinking about doing and what I was leaning towards, and Bill said, "Brad, diversification isn't your answer because you don't know enough about all the things you're diversifying into. Don't get bigger, because you getting bigger at 120 cows is like the worst place to be right now. You want to cash flow a flat parlor and cash flow a little freestall barn to get your cows out of the tie barn?" He said, "Do that and see how long you hang on, if that's what your plan is." So the president of Farm Credit told me what I was thinking. So that's what I did. Kind of wrote it out, kind of wrote it to the end. If I had been, more stable in my family situation, I probably could have made some decisions then and moved towards more grass-based, had a few more cows and gone that direction. But just wasn't the time for me. And I mean, now it's a different conversation. There was none of that conversation. Now I had a grass-based dairy based on finances. You know, the mixer wagon broke and I wasn't going to buy a new mixer wagon. And one day I was getting commodity feed from Interstate and my buddy didn't show up with a load of feed for 2 days. So I didn't have feed for 2 days and the milk production didn't change and manure didn't change. And I said, let's hold off. You can't get that feed. If you're not going to get that feed today, don't bring it till next week. And let me call you before. And we had a good spring, and that was the end of that. Never bought a load of feed again. So that was like 7 years of that. You know, baleage in the winter. And if it got real cold, I'd get a load of corn silage from a neighbor or something. So I was kind of on this path and didn't know it.
Yeah.
And going backwards with coming from a frugal family, inputs, like we didn't use a lot of inputs. We had more land than we needed. The overhead for having land until 2000 wasn't so bad with the tax structure that we had. But so you took some land, you took first cutting off, and then you pastured your heifers on it. And we just frugal, didn't have a lot of inputs. So that's kind of what I learned. So it wasn't hard for me not to top dress hay ground and not plant so much corn and put half the nitrogen that they told you to put on it and use the manure spreader sparingly, where you needed it, and you just learned a lot of stuff.
And then was there a certain time to where you realized that now it's time to just put it under wraps?
Well, I got down to a certain number of cows, and they called me one morning. The milk company called me at 6 o'clock and said they weren't gonna. I wasn't shipping enough milk. They weren't gonna pick my milk up anymore.
And then
6 o'clock in the morning. So I thanked her. It's like I was mad because it was the end of 100 years of this. But I thanked her and hung up the phone. At that point, the wife had come down. She'd get ready for work. She said, what was the phone ringing? I said, DFA just called and they're going to shut me off. It's like hysterical. She said, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? I said, you're going to call Bella and you're going to tell Bella what's going on. My daughter's at Cornell taking dairy science, or she's at Cobleskill, dairy science program. She said, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to call John Luskin and my cows are going to sale. I said, I'm not milking another cow. I'm all done.
What year is this?
18. So February of 18. So my wife drove to Cobleskill, got my daughter. My daughter and I put our cows on the truck, and that was the end of it. And that's as soon as it got warmed up and I could get my heifers out of the barn so it wouldn't freeze, I sold the heifers and it was done.
When that happened, what were you thinking?
So it was dramatic.
Yeah.
But my family situation that was more important at that point was dramatic. My marriage, I'd filed for divorce in January, and that was a month into that mess. Mm-hmm. And that mess took precedence over the milk mess. So I never really looked back. I never really looked back at it. There was some, I never minded milking cows. I never mind feeding cows. I never mind taking care of cows. There's sometimes I go down there in the barn and it's like I spent my whole life in the barn, right? Got pictures of Grandpa in the barn and Dad in the barn and us in the barn. It's hard. My kids in the barn. It's hard. But I also realized the economics of it. It's just not. It's not fun to not be in control of your own. You're not in control of your own destiny. There's nobody that's milking cows that's putting milk in a milk tank right now, that's in control of their own destiny. They can decide whether they want to milk cows or not, but they're in somebody else's. Somebody else is telling them what they're going to get for their animals and what they're going to get for their milk, and when it's getting picked up. And